We are delighted to have you here tonight. I'm Rob Brisk, and I'm the head of school here at Wellington. And we're so excited to kick off our enrichment series for the 2016-17, 17-18. We're 17-18, right?
I don't do math.
The 2017-18 year. And we're particularly delighted to have Ashley Koff with us here today. We are very proud to say that she's an alumna of the Wellington School. And before I introduce her, though, I want to say that you have a variety of exciting things on your chair. If you're feeling lumpy, you're sitting on the exciting variety of things on your chair. But I wanted just to alert you to a couple of things. We've been doing our enrichment series for years now, and there is a flyer that will tell you all of the events in our enrichment series, and they are terrific. If you want to read this, don't, because it's blank. It's a blank notebook for note-taking, a beautiful Wellington pen, beautiful Wellington pen that works. We also have, and we'd ask you to fill this out before you leave and leave it on your seat. We are asking you for some information about our series, how you heard of us, and all of that. If you'd fill that out and leave that on your seat, it helps us as we plan future events. So we'd like you to do that as well. And a special, exciting The Better Nutrition Plan, which has been put together by our very own speaker. So, Ashley is famous here, and for those of you who received the JAG magazine, this is our latest. And I don't think it's gone out yet, has it?
Yes.
You've received it? I got it 2 days ago. But
Show your photo.
Well, always, because there always has to be a little picture of me. But on the next page, we have a big picture of Ashley.
Everyone wants for their.
Everyone wants, exactly.
I think it fits right into a frame.
So I just wanted to say that Ashley is class of 1991, and if you walk around this way into past the doors and you keep your eyes on the right, you will see our composite picture of all of the members of the class of 1991, and there is a wonderful picture of Ashley there. And I wondered as I was looking at that picture what she thought she might be doing in 2017. I wonder when I looked at that picture whether she knew that at that point you might have known that you were headed off to Duke with a wish to be an advertiser, but that her travels would take her so many other places. A master's degree from NYU, finishing your work in nutrition at LA County Hospital.
And
Columbus Children's Hospital, that she would be on a variety of television shows and become nutritionist to the stars. Before moving to Washington, D.C., where you've taken up the trumpet.
Thank God. Yes, the trumpet. You gave me pause there. I have. Yes. I've retaken it up. So
I'm wondering if you have the trumpet, we'd like for you to play it for us. If you have it with you, we're ready. Oh, okay.
I'll come back. That would be great.
An Ashley trumpet concert would be a fabulous thing. Did she know when that picture was being snapped that she would be an author of books like Mom Energy? Ashley was here, we think, in 2012, to talk about Mom Energy. It was a great presentation, even though I was not a mom nor had any energy. It was a terrific evening. So we're delighted to have Ashley with us because not only is she going to impart a whole lot of very interesting information to us, but she really is the kind of alum and the kind of student that we're proud of, a person who's left us with a passion to learn more, to seek out new frontiers, and to take that wherever it might lead. So we are just delighted to have you here. We thank you for coming. You were a Jaguar, and you are a Jaguar, and always will be.
Thank you.
Ashley Koff, thank you.
Super excited. Thank you. I'm going to turn on my mic. I just realized I don't know where the clicker is. That's the only thing. I know we were discussing that there is a clicker. Totally. Great. It's where it should be, so we don't lose it. So first of all, thank you. So Laura Cook over here, if you want to stand up or you want to wave your hand. Nope, not at all. Thank you so much for putting this together and having me come in. This is such a fun thing to be able to do. And my family has all left Columbus. Hi. My family's all left Columbus, and so it's really fun for me to be able to come back. And what a school. I'm astonished every time I come back to see what is going on and what's being built and all of these different pieces. We were in the car earlier, and we were talking a little bit with Laura's daughter about one of the games that they play at school. Yeah, about doing the color day, and so really getting across a great nutrition message about how to eat a rainbow for better nutrition, and focusing the kids in on that part. So totally love that to see that some of these things are happening, because that wasn't happening when I was here, and it wasn't unique that it wasn't happening at Wellington, but the nutrition conversation was not happening. And for me, that was awesome, because I didn't really have any interest in that part, and I wanted to go on and work in advertising, and I wanted to sell lots of different things. I ended up going and working at J. Walter Thompson, and I was my key project there was working on Kellogg's. So I created commercials to help parents make sure that they sold and had purchased sugared cereals for their kids, so things like Smacks, and then created Raisin Bran Crunch, because of course the only thing that Raisin Bran really needed was more sugar on the actual flakes and on the raisins to make it crunchy, and doing things like that, and then talking about how they provided more energy, because I don't know if you know this, but legally, if something has more sugar, you can actually communicate that it provides more energy, because sugar provides energy, right? And the whole time that this was going on, for me personally, I was not feeling well. I had tried, in college, somewhere along the lines in college, I had a bad experience with chicken and decided to be a vegan. And at that point, I was sort of just fumbling around with what we know as plant-based nutrition today. And but also, a lot of just sort of trying to figure out, as you are in college, how to feed yourself and find the time, and figure out what is good for you. But later on, when I had moved to New York, I was really trying to deal with how I could have my own nutrition help me feel better. I was noticing that despite being a vegan, and at the time, exercise, I was training for a marathon, I was doing yoga all the time, and all of these things, like nothing felt good. And for me, it was really about digestion. I didn't know that at the time, but I kept thinking, gosh, my stomach doesn't feel good. I'm not sure why things are going very well, or aren't going well. And I would go see doctor after doctor to try to find out what was going on for me. And doctor after doctor was like, you're totally good. We've taken your blood work, everything's fine, all good on that part. And then somebody was like, maybe this isn't good. So then I went to see those kinds of doctors, and so you're like talking. Of course, you then learn, oh, of course, it was my mom's fault, or it was my dad's fault as I'm going to the therapist. But even all that time of saying it was their fault, and calling them up and telling them that, it still didn't help my digestion, right? And I was spending their money to go, do that part. And so it was odd, but it still wasn't getting me where I needed to be. And so I was telling the story earlier today, and every time I tell it, it's always like there's a different end date. I'm going to tell you the story, but I want to make sure that you still feel comfortable staying and taking my advice. So I'll move through it quickly, which is I had gone and done a bunch of different things. I wasn't just vegan. I tried macrobiotic. I tried cleansing, fasting, like all the things that we hear about today. And I was really eliminating just more and more foods, because I just was finding that I felt like if I looked at anything, that it would just not make me feel well. And I ended up in a yoga class with a woman who self-professed healer, and she said she'd worked with all of these people, and a couple of people in the class I think even said she did. And so I went to her home for one of the sessions, and she pricked my finger. She did rub alcohol, I remember that, and then pricked my finger, took my blood, and put it on a slide, and literally stuck it under like a Fisher-Price microscope. I'm not kidding you. I'm sure there was like nothing scientific. So then she starts asking me some questions. And I have to say, the nice part, at least at that point, was she was asking me some questions, right? How many of you have gone to a doctor's appointment and they're not asking you like any of the lifestyle questions, or anything about that? And she said, do you not feel well when you have this? Do you not feel? And I said, yes. And she said, well, how about at like age 15? Was life difficult? And I was like, yes, it was so great. It was difficult. And then she's like, and did you feel like a lot of this stuff changed for you? 14, 15, your belly, your this, that. And I was like, yeah, totally. She's like, well, you got a worm when you were 14. Yeah, you got a worm, and it was going all through your digestive tract, and et cetera. And I was like, whoa, like this is, I was like, okay. So I got a worm, and she said, and so the only way that we can help you get healthier is if you do a 7-day goat's milk cleanse. Because unbeknownst to me at the time, goat's milk is actually the perfect food. So goat's milk, we have a dietitian sitting over here, Tori, who knows that this is not true and there is no perfect food. However, what was communicated to me is it was the perfect food. It has carbohydrate, it has protein, it has healthy fats. You actually need nothing else other than that. And I had to drink at least 40 ounces because let me be clear, I would have much rather just not had the goat's milk, but I had to drink 40 ounces of goat's milk every day. So I did this for 7 days. And on day number 5, I was like, oh, I mean, I couldn't even believe that I'm doing this. I'll never, by the way, never drink goat's milk again. I don't even, like, no goat's cheese, nothing on that part. But the drinking the goat's milk, I actually was noticing that I was feeling a little bit better. She had told me to like look after I go to the bathroom and see, and I would see some great results. And I was like, this is kind of a great, and it's going along well. But I even like took it to the bar with me and had the bartender put it in a rocks glass with a glass, with an ice cube in there so that I could be normal when I was in there, even though the bartender was like, you're crazy, but everybody else is like, oh, she's just out having a White Russian, this is good. So I'm doing all of this, and I leave, and on the 7th day, 8th day, 9th day, I'm feeling amazing. Like I have the best energy. I'm feeling like my, the bloating is gone. I feel like my digestive system, everything, 9th, 10th, 11th. But, a week and a half later, nope, right back to how I was feeling, right? I felt awful. And then you feel awful because you're also like, I just drank goat's milk for 7 days, 40 ounces, and I paid this woman to do this. Like, what is? And so at the time before the goat's milk and all of that, I was not drinking. And I think right after that, I was like, let me find the next bar. So I remember sitting in a bar drinking a very appropriate amount. At the time, I was totally the appropriate age, drinking, 1 glass of alcohol. But I was telling the story and had a lot of people laughing. And one of the people that was laughing turned out to be an integrative gastroenterologist, which if you don't know about integrative medicine is the space today where we're really looking at best practices of medicine practice all over the world. So certainly saying there are great reasons for medications, but also we should be looking at your nutrition and we should be asking questions like this woman asked right when I walked in, and she said, so I think I know what's going on, but I'm going to take you through my practice so you can see, what isn't woo-woo, right? Like what isn't going to this person and getting your blood pricked. And she said, so by any chance as a kid were you given an antibiotic? And I was like, given an antibiotic? I was giving them like candy. So I had an ear infection and throat infection. I had strep throat for as long as I could remember. I had an ear infection. I'd had my tonsils out in college. And I said, my dad was a doctor, and I remember, I think I used to ruin all the vacations, so they would give me the antibiotic before we got on the plane at a certain point. It was just so that I wouldn't get that ear infection. And she said, okay, so I don't need to hear anymore, but I'm going to. I want to keep taking you through this. I'm going to actually have you go do the stool test. I'm going to have you go do this other stuff for the primary reason for you to understand what an assessment, what an assessment is actually about. But what I'd like you to do is go on a probiotic, and she gave me a probiotic, and I think you would benefit from some magnesium because your system is really slowed down, and that's part of what's going on with the bloating and in these pieces. And so I did that, and literally within 2 to 3 weeks, I was feeling better. And then within 6 months, I was doing great. And one of the best things that she said to me at that point is she said, the other thing I want you to do is I want you to go back to eating the way that you were eating. You were eating so healthy. I'd given up broccoli, like one of my favorite foods, literally of all times, but it had made me feel bloated. And so I was like, I'm not eating broccoli. She's like, I want you to go back to all of that. And that for me was this light bulb of how could I have been searching for the right diet or the right program or the right nutrition or any of the, I was looking for every perfect thing, and I was trying to do them all perfectly. But the reality is that my system had, because I had taken those antibiotics and then, things forward, was actually in need of some repair work, and then I could be running perfectly, right, on that part, or running better. And so that really spurred for me a huge interest in going back to graduate school, and that's how I ended up in school and ended up working with individuals on that part. And that assessment piece is something that I absolutely believe that it is the biggest issue today. I think it's the #1 mistake. I think most people are guessing what their body needs to run better, not assessing. And so what we're going to talk a lot about today is what better nutrition is, and I'm going to help you go through that part. And the reason that you have a workbook in front of you instead of like me giving you a book afterwards is that reading books is great. Reading books is awesome. You should read books. But if we want to create change, if we want to figure out what our body needs, if we want to do better, then we actually have to do work. And that work, it shouldn't be difficult. It should be about really doing that assessment work. So we've got our workbook, so you can actually do the workbook along with me today, or if you want to take it home, take notes now and take it home. The other part is a lot of this stuff is on my website, so you also don't have to take notes if you don't want to, so we don't feel like we're too much at school right now. So I will get started on that part, and we'll save questions for the end so I can go through this. I want to have a robust Q&A, but I also was saying that, and I've got some helpers, right, to help me with the, okay, good. So we're going to ask I'm going to ask some questions, and as I ask, I am going to be offering up some prizes. And so the prizes I will mail to you or have mailed to you. So what I would love for you to do, Elizabeth, do you want the people to tell you, or do you want them to tell Annalise their name? What's easier? What do you think is better? Either way. So maybe Annalise will write it down, and then you can check with her and see. How does that sound? Okay, great. So whoever wins, when I call on you, if you get the right answer, then I will go ahead and tell you that you're winning a prize. And if you can just tell Anna, raise your hand. There we go. Good. So I've got her in the front row. If you can just tell her at the end, and then I'll just give you my card. You can email me your address on that part, and we'll go from there. So the first question that I want to ask is, does anyone know what better nutrition is? Yeah, go ahead.
Better than you were doing before?
Hey, maybe not, right? Okay, but a lot of people feel that way. They're like, we need to do that part. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to check in on that part. Okay, we're not going to go over the agenda. This is me, but you can read all about me in the book. So the key thing is on this part. That nobody in my book, and certainly in all of the talks that I've done or interactions, and certainly with the patients in my office, nobody is coming in and saying, I want better nutrition. None of us want better nutrition. We want better health, right? There is no such thing as perfect health, never. So we can't be perfect, but there is better health. And we know that if we don't have it, we want to get it. But also if we're lucky enough, if we're sitting here and we're like, you know what, I feel pretty healthy, things are good, we want to keep it, right? And so I think that part, the challenge is, we ask the question, how am I going to get it? And this is the world that we're in today. How am I going to get it? Well, I can sell you, 50 different books that would say that you could get it by paleo. We could do it from, I'm not sure, from a dairy-free standpoint. We could be vegan. We've got, fasting. We've got juices, right? There are all these different ways that we're trying to get healthy on that part. Goat's milk cleanses, all of that. And could those things work? Totally. Do they work? Sometimes. It feels like a little bit, of a chance of whether or not what you're doing is actually going to work for you in terms of getting the results. And I think a key thing there is that we're missing what we're actually trying to get to, right? When we're trying to get to that better health, we have to realize that we need to know what the definition of better nutrition is, because better nutrition is what delivers better health. So all nutrition, anything that's going in or on our body is going to have an impact on our health. Anything that's going in and on your body. So it's going to have an impact on your health. Better nutrition will deliver better health. It's a part of, and we have to remember that better nutrition, and so I want everybody to make sure that they understand this definition. This is really important from a better understanding the definition of better nutrition, because unfortunately today there's a lot of debate about what is that definition, right? Somebody will say it's more, like, of course, more calcium is better for you, right? Or doing better than I was doing yesterday is going to be better for me. But when we're talking about better nutrition, what we're really trying to do is give the body the resources that it needs without giving it things that will be irritating, overwhelming, disrupting to it, so that it can run better, all right? So I think that's a key thing. I like to use the analogy of a car. So it's about making sure we're putting gas in the tank, engine, there's oil in the engine, that there's air in the tires, right? That the car's clean inside. So we need to make sure that we're always taking care of that car. It's a similar analogy from our body standpoint. So what is better nutrition? So this is actually all in your book as well as online. So one of the key things, better nutrition better be delicious. How many people here have ever eaten something because it's healthy? Yeah, and keep your hand up if it tasted good. Most of the hands went down, right? So part of the thing from a marketing standpoint I learned is to just never tell anyone that anything's healthy. If you don't tell them it's healthy, good note to, don't tell your kids that the food is healthy. Just talk about how delicious it is, right? And then we're going to engage on that part. It has to be delicious, because if it's not delicious, what do? We go find something that's delicious, right? Or we keep eating more because we're just not satisfied on that part. So I think the delicious piece actually has to lead. And that's going to be a really important one to think about when you're looking and assessing your nutrition, because as you're assessing your nutrition, if you're eating things that you aren't finding delicious in that moment, you can start to see how did that set up for if you had a breakfast that was then lunch was kind of, and then by the evening was that when, okay, I really needed a glass of wine, or I totally ended up, I was going to make something healthy, but I ended up having something that was more just delicious but not as healthy. It can really impact how we do throughout the day. Better nutrition is better, not perfect. This is a really important one as well. When we're talking about how the body actually gets healthy, how we get that better health from better nutrition, it's about making what I call better, not perfect choices more often. So that's kind of nice. We all get to exhale a little bit, right? We get to exhale because we don't have to make perfect choices. In fact, there isn't a perfect choice. But what we do have to focus on, and this is what we're going to focus on in the workshop part, is what am I doing more often? That is going to be the key on that part. What am I having more often? What am I putting on my body more often? Those are going to be really important. Better nutrition better be based on you, because if you're following, we were doing a talk earlier today, and I gave the whole talk, and I said, so many people want to know what it is that I do, but that's crazy, because if any one of you asked me right now what I had for breakfast, so other than maybe giving you an idea of something, how are you going to know if it's what your body needs, right? It's what I found delicious, and it's what I figured out is working for my body. And yet, we're reading things, or we're picking up like Tom Brady's new book, or we're looking at anything out there, and we're like, oh, what is he doing, right? And we're applying what other people are doing without focusing on, is it for me? And I think that piece is going to be the most important shift on that part for you. Better nutrition better be plant-based. We need our diets to be plant-based. Totally can accessorize with meat. You can accessorize with dairy products, if they're good quality, but we need to be plant-based because plants provide nutrients that animals don't. So animals in nature eat plants in order to get those nutrients into their body. We all, as animals, we need to make sure that we're also getting in those plants. So plant-based, better fit into your budget. So if I stood up here and talked about things that far exceeded your budget the whole time, that's not very helpful. We were talking about the price of Honeycrisp apples, and it's like if they keep going up, I don't care how great they are, they're going to become a once in a while, right? And from a price standpoint. And then the 4 pillars, the 4 remaining are the 4 pillars of better nutrition, and they're over here. The quantity, this is what we're going to work on now. We've got the quantity, so what's your serving size? Notice I didn't say what's the serving size on the package or what is the serving size. What's your serving size? Because on occasion, we might eat more than the package is saying from a serving size standpoint. Quality, we want to understand, are we putting things, remember those nutrient resources, are we putting things into our body that our body recognizes, or are we putting things into our body that are from a chemistry lab, and that the body, it may not be problematic, but it may not actually do anything helpful. So an example there would be artificial colors. So artificial colors, there's some evidence for some people are actually hurting them from a health standpoint, right, or a negative. However, for most of us, what are they doing? They're actually just not doing anything. Colors in food, our fruits and vegetables, are actually doing a heck of a lot in our body. They do amazing things. All the different colors out there do amazing things, right? So I wonder if anyone could tell me what is an orange, if you could give me a fruit and a vegetable that's orange. Who could? Raise your hand if you know a fruit and a vegetable. Go ahead, yeah. Yeah, great. So you win a prize. So that's totally great. So a carrot and an orange. All right, well done. See, paying attention. I like that. So a carrot and an orange. So I think in that part, we want to think about when you're eating a carrot and an orange, I'm getting nutrients to heal my skin. I'm getting nutrients to help my eyesight. I'm getting nutrients to aid my digestive system. And I'm also getting nutrients to support my body's detoxification system. So if I'm eating a candy that's flavored with orange number 7 or colored with orange number 7, I'm just not getting any of that, right? And so I think that's it. I think we're spending too much time in this argument space of how bad are artificial colors, and then some people will say there's no science to prove that it isn't. So my whole point is it is just not helpful. There's no reason to, on a consistent basis, put something into your body that's not helpful. Do I like a good and plenty? You bet. Is it a core of my diet? Absolutely not, because that pink is not natural, and I don't need to be bringing that in more often. So from a nutrient balance standpoint, that's going to be the third pillar. Nutrient balance is really important. We got derailed with this whole idea of calories, right? So I would like for you to tell me if a snack, so raise your hand and tell me how many calories a snack should be for the average adult. If anyone has an idea. Yeah. There you go. Good marketing. I did my job very well, right? How many calories, so that's not it, but you're totally proving my point. Does anyone else have any ideas how many calories? Yeah. 300 for a snack, okay. Anybody else? Yeah, in the back. There you go, okay. 200, okay? Do I hear 250? No, I'm just kidding. So there is no right answer. So it does vary per person, but more importantly, it actually has, our bodies do not care about the number of calories, they care about the quality of calories, right? And the nutrient balance of calories. So the calorie conversation has led us into really bad eating and even worse dieting. And I remember being like just stunned in my dietetic training that we were told every woman, I remember, between, depending if you were at a healthy weight, it was every woman over the age of 18 until it was 18 to, I want to say it was either 45 or 55. I might be wishfully thinking it was 55 at this point. But that everybody should be having 1,500 calories, right? 1,500 calories just across the board. And I was like, so you're talking about like, in that age range, in that span there, you're talking about women who are going to have children, women who have had children, you're talking about, like, I mean, there's so much range in that space, right? And so assigning a calorie amount has a flaw on a lot of levels. First of all, our body does not care how many calories we get in total in the day. When I give you a number for the day, it's not about that number. It's about how you shop or how you spend that number. So if I eat, and this used to happen all the time with my patients that were on Weight Watchers, they would follow the points, and they'd be like, I had 1 or 2 points, like maybe eating really lightly, like 1 or 2 points at breakfast, 1 or 2 points at lunch, and then between about 4 o'clock and midnight, if I had 16 points, I had now had 14 more points to use up, right? And it was like, it's great, I can have pizza and wine and do all this, and I don't know why I'm not getting the results. It's because you can't spend like that. The body is getting too much. It's getting overwhelmed by having that amount at that point. So one of the things about calories is that we actually should be paying attention to the calories at the different pit stops. I don't use the word meal or snack. I just call them nutrition pit stops, and so that's number 4, which is this frequency. But it's actually how we're spending the calories, how we're spending that allotment. So you might do fine, probably not on 100 calories, but maybe on 150 calories. You could have an apple and some almond butter, right? And that could be in roughly at about 150 calories. Or you might do really well with 300 calories at that eating occasion if there's a balance of carbohydrate, protein, healthy fats, and also our non-starchy vegetables. So it really is about that idea of nutrient balance that we're looking for. So if we're doing a smoothie, we were talking about this before, if you're doing a smoothie, a lot of times, for whatever reason, the smoothies became this idea of blending up fruit. So that can be it's a great way to get in the colors, great on that part. But if we're just putting fruit and then we're putting milk in there, suddenly we're getting carbohydrate, maybe a little bit of protein, but we can be getting too much carbohydrate. And what happens, all right, girls, I'm going to put you on the spot. What happens to a car if you put too much gas in the tank? Where does that extra gas go? Does it go into another tank? To the person's tank behind you? No, it spills, right? Come on, you have to have seen your parents. Yeah, and it pollutes the air, and it could be dangerous, and you could spill it on your clothes, and it could be dirty, right? So it certainly is wasteful. It's definitely not useful. It's expensive, and it can be dangerous. It could pollute the air. It could pollute our systems. So if we're having too much carbohydrate at one time, we're overfilling that tank, right? And so what we want to do is we want to work on that better nutrient balance. So those are going to be our 4 pillars. So how are we going to get you there? We're going to get you there by assessing what you actually need. And then this is really important, this keeping what you're already doing better. I've worked with thousands of patients over 20 years. I've never met a total health hot mess. I don't think they're in the room. We're all doing something better. And the really important point on focusing on that is not that I want to just like pat you all on the back and be like, you're all doing something better, yay team. I do want to do that because I feel like we're really in this negative space around our nutrition. We all think better nutrition is about doing something better than we're currently doing, right? That part, it so speaks to, where our mindsets are. And yet, what we really actually can discover when we identify what we're already doing better is how we can do other things better. So, does anyone here remember to brush their teeth in the morning? Right? A few of us? Okay, cool. Most mornings we remember it. There may be a host of reasons. It might be because we have to pass through the bathroom on the way to going in to get our coffee. It might be that we're trying to remind our kids in order to, that they need to brush their teeth. It might be, there's so many different reasons why. When we figure out how we're remembering that, I can help you remember to take your vitamin D supplement. When we figure out how you're making time to go to the coffee shop, I can figure out how you can make time to get some more steps in the day. When we're figuring out, so we can start to look at the things that we're already doing better can give us insight in how we can do more things better. And that's how we learn to act better, not perfect, more often, and address whatever needs attention. So what do we actually need? And we're going to get into how we can do it in a moment. We basically need to make sure that we're focusing on what goes in and on your body more often. this is really important too, because some more of the non-good nutrition stuff that's out there tends to be very general. Is anyone here familiar with the Dirty Dozen? Have you heard from the environment? So in an effort to understand what fruits and vegetables are sprayed with more pesticides, the Environmental Working Group created this, which is awesome, and it's great to see that. And so we often say, like people say, what should you choose that's organic? And the answer right off the bat is, if they know what the Dirty Dozen is, well, any of those fruits and vegetables that are on the Dirty Dozen. Super helpful if you actually are eating those fruits and vegetables that are on the Dirty Dozen list, right? And if you're eating them more often. If that's the foundation of your diet, then we should be choosing those organic more often because we don't want the extra pesticide residue. But what about the milk in your coffee, right? And what about the lotion that you're putting on your skin every day or the soap that you're washing with? Or what about your supplement? I see so often that people are making all of these great choices from a food standpoint, and then they're taking like the drive-through poor quality junk food version of a supplement, either because it's like, oh, they all, this costs less, or whatever on that part. And you're taking that every single day, and the only reason it doesn't taste delicious and you don't need it, the only reason we're taking it is to actually improve our health, right, from a nutrient standpoint. So on that front, we're like, okay, that is going to be something. If we're doing that more often, we've got to make sure that that's better quality. So we'll go into and making sure that it gives your body what you need, and also focusing on what really are your goals. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Everyone you can open up your book if you want. If you don't want to do it in the book because you think you want to use the book again, that's why we've got the workbook or the blank pages for you. Plus they have the nice Wellington logo on them. And so what you can do, and you can also do this in groups, that can sometimes make things more fun to do, is just jot down what you had to eat and drink today. And I'm going to pretend that today was a typical day. There are 3 groups in your book. There's a typical day, there's a not so typical day, and there's a play day. Okay? We should all make sure that we have at least one play day in a week. But what we want to do right now is just go ahead, and I want you to go and fill it out just like this, starting with, I woke up at whatever time, feeling however, and then we'll go through that. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. Uh-oh, someone's going to have to do homework. For anyone that's having difficulty remembering, I'm also going to remind you why it's so important that we actually do keep a food journal if we are trying to assess ourselves, because if you asked me to do this food journal for yesterday, I couldn't remember. So that's why I personally keep a food journal so that I can start tracking some of these things. So I am a big believer in writing it down. Okay, I'm gonna start moving us in just in the interest of time. I will say that when I said that at a group recently, and I said, so if anyone's having trouble remembering, and somebody popped up and they're like, yeah, what supplement do you take for remembering? And I was like, no, it's not about taking a supplement. It's about writing it down. Did anyone wake up feeling tired? Okay. Did anyone wake up feeling stressed? A couple of people, okay. Did anyone wake up feeling awesome, like it was the best day ever? All right, good. Hey, nice. All right, good. It's probably because you got to hang out with me last night. That's great. So sometimes that gives us enough of an indication. So for example, when we wake up feeling tired, we may not make great choices in the morning with our food choices. If we are consistently waking up tired, we can certainly work on sleep, and I've got a Better Nutrition Sleep lesson that's on my homepage right now. You can grab that information. But when we wake up tired, it's important to know that our body is going to need fuel throughout the day at regular pit stops. Otherwise, what can happen is we can make less good choices, because when we're tired, our body wants sugar. Our body wants sugar, and that's why a lot of us, when we're tired at night and we come home at maybe like 5, 6 o'clock, we're finishing making a meal at 5 o'clock, et cetera, and suddenly the ice cream or other things can look good, or another glass of wine or whatever it is. We want the sugar in that part to keep us awake. And especially if we then are saying, I've got other work that I need to do tonight, so let me keep working on that, then we might turn to that sugar. And sugar, remember, is in a bunch of different forms, the carbohydrates across the board. So if you're feeling tired, so if you're feeling stressed, it's great to know that, so first of all, there is a wonderful thing, we can all do it right now. If you take for a moment and breathe in through your nose for the count of 4, you can count for yourself. Breathe in through your nose for the count of 4, and then hold it for the count of 7, and then exhale out your mouth for the count of 8. Okay. And if we do that 10 times, we're actually shifting, and you can do cycles of 10. You're shifting your body from the fight or flight stage to the relaxed stage. Okay? So we actually do that in integrative medicine as a test even to see if we can shift somebody's blood pressure before we're starting to assign blood pressure medication or looking at dosage. So it can be really valuable to learn some of those breathing things, because what if you did 10 of those breaths before you had breakfast or your coffee, right? Sometimes we wake up and we're stressed, and the first thing we want to do is have coffee, and that might be giving us, stressing the body out, adding to that stress and that tension. When we wake up stressed, an interesting thing happens when the body is in the stress state. Digestion is actually not its top priority. So what is its top priority is running away from the proverbial lion. That's the way our bodies were developed. And so because digestion isn't that top priority, 2 things are happening. One is we may not feel like eating or hungry, or we just might feel like, hey, let me get out the door, but we're getting out the door without fuel in us. And the second thing is that if we do take something in, it may make us feel more bloated, or we just may not feel as like we're absorbing it, or we just may not get the better energy benefits from it. So that is actually where I'll turn to liquid nutrition. That's where having a smoothie in the morning can be a great option. If you're noting, or if you know, hey, I know tomorrow morning's going to be stressful, then that's something that I could put the ingredients of a smoothie together and then just have to blend it in the morning, or have blended it the night before and re-blended in the morning, and be able to go on that part. When something is in the liquid form, the blender has done the work of your digestive system, right? At least that first stage. And so we're able to absorb those nutrients, really easily. Okay, so I would like for somebody, you'll get a prize for this, to tell me what they had. You can pick any pit stop, but one of the pit stops and we're going to walk through your pit stop. So who wants to tell me, you want to do one? Look at that. No, you don't have to. Okay, who wants to do one? There you go, go ahead.
2 scrambled eggs in olive oil.
In olive oil, okay. So you woke up in the morning and that was the first thing that you had? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any water with it? And also she gets a prize, just remember. Yeah.
Water first.
You had water first? Okay. Tea, coffee?
And coffee, 1/4 cup coffee with almond milk.
With almond milk. A lot of almond milk, a little almond milk? Okay, great. So is almond milk a good source of protein? That's a great source of protein, right? I see all these head nods. Nope. Has no protein in it. Yeah. Almond milk is really, I want us to think about it, it's almond water. Okay, so basically what's left over when we're doing, unless we're making it homemade. If we're making homemade cashew milk or almond milk, we might be getting those nutrients in. But when they're making it, we're really not getting that protein in there. And you'll see that when you flip over the label. Some of them are a little different, or like an almond yogurt, for example, or coconut yogurt. Those are usually don't provide a good source of protein. Not an issue. I love that you're having it in there. Great choice, no problem. We just want to know that that's different than if we had milk, which might have been giving us some protein, but also more carbohydrate. And the almond milk isn't giving us any carbohydrate, right? So what you had, so we are getting a little bit of a stimulant boost, and then you're giving your body the protein and the healthy fats, right? You have the olive oil and the protein. So that may work beautifully for you. It depends a little bit on what was happening later in the day. Normally, I try to still get in a carbohydrate in there. So I might say like, hey, maybe we want to have some berries with that, or maybe a little bit of sweet potato, or maybe I want to have some oats, or I'll do a pancake where I'll take egg and half of a banana and mix it together, and you can do that pancake, that kind of a thing. So you don't have to have the carbohydrate in the morning. The problem is that if you don't have the carbohydrate in the morning, it can impact your choices later in the day, right? Because that carbohydrate is that energy that we need, that gas, that energy. There are a lot of programs right now that are saying like carbohydrates are the worst thing ever for you. The body would beg to differ because it's the preferred form of energy and of fuel, and especially for brain. And I know that I was just standing in front of 3 people at I'm staying across from the Whole Foods in their coffee shop. 3 people came in and ordered the bulletproof coffee coffee, and they all explained why they were ordering it. You know, the one was like, I don't know, there's this guy and he's selling it and he says my brain will work better, you know, and then I was like, just give her coffee, like she definitely needs it, you know, and then the next one was like, well, I've been following this plan and I'm doing this, you know, whatever, and somebody else, and I was laughing because we do these things, we read about them, we're all human, I mean, same thing, not really sure of like if it works that way or how it works, and then I asked one of them and I was like, so what do you think? And he's like, well, I don't like the taste of it at all, I miss my old coffee, but like I guess I have to do this, and so for me that was sad because I was like, you know, I don't think we should, I think you should enjoy, you know, the taste of your coffee, but the other person was actually saying she actually did not drink coffee until she heard about Bulletproof, and now she's having coffee every day, and she's putting the butter in there, and I was like, so you just went from, and she was telling me what she was having she used to have green tea in the morning with oatmeal, and now she's doing Bulletproof, which was coffee with butter and the MCT oil in it, and I was like, you know, there are a lot of Okinawans and people around the world that are just like, you know, from a longevity standpoint, that are turning around and saying like your green tea with your oats was a great choice, you know. So I think we can, I mean, who knows on all of these pieces, it's all very individual, but so I will not say that you have to have the carbohydrate, but I think for the exercise here, that nutrient balance goal would be to go ahead and add in a carbohydrate, and you could, if you wanted to, add in some vegetable, right? You could, so maybe you want to do salsa with your eggs, right? And that could be a way, or maybe there's a little bit of leftover, you know, vegetable from the other night. And the goal there is to just start, it makes it harder if we use up one of our eating occasions and we haven't had any colors, it makes it harder to do what I think is one of the healthiest things we can do, which is to eat a rainbow every day, right? So when we eat a rainbow every day, so give me an example of a purple fruit or vegetable.
Cabbage.
A cabbage, totally. Do you have one?
Plum.
A plum, totally. Okay, so 2 prizes. We got prizes going on here. Just make sure you honor your name. And so we've got, so from a purple standpoint, purple is going to be amazing for coronary health, right? It's going to be helpful for healthy blood and for heart health, et cetera. And so, you know, that like having sauteed purple onions, and one of the things I love about them is they're actually pretty sweet. So if you are trying to lower your carbohydrate intake, you can saute up a bunch of purple onions, and then you've got, and that adds in very nicely to your eggs and, you know, that kind of a thing. But you can see how it can start to be challenging if we have, so in a rainbow, we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then we also, see how I did that? And then we also have white, I went to Wellington, white and brown, right? So we've got 8 colors in there. It can be hard to get 8 colors in if I start not having vegetables or adding it, or fruit until, you know, my 3rd or 4th pit stop on that part. Okay, anyone else want to share a pit stop? Maybe not a breakfast one, but a different one? Anything? I'm going to go with, yeah, in the back. Yeah.
I went to Whole Foods today. They have this awesome salad bar.
Yeah.
They have the teriyaki salmon.
Okay.
Get a salad with teriyaki salmon on there.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
And that was at lunchtime. And what was on your salad?
I had the organic mixed greens to romaine.
Yeah.
Arugula, celery. I had some sesame seeds on there.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I love greens.
Great. Yeah.
I can't remember everything. I had some purple onions.
Okay.
Definitely had the purple onions on there. Peas.
Okay.
I like texture too, so I can't taste everything, but
Did you have anything to drink with it?
lots of water.
A lot of water with it. Yeah. Good. And then, so no like beans or sweet potato or any of the, or corn. You mentioned peas on there, right?
Oh, I had some radish.
Some radish. Amazing.
Yeah. Some peas, but no, I didn't do
But
any.
no-
I usually do. I like the navy beans.
Yeah.
Vanilla beans. All those things.
Great. Totally. She's a ringer. I planted her. No, I'm just kidding. Great meal on that part. We love it because there's great variety and doing all that. And that is a very easy way, right? You know, to be able to get, you go in there and to be able to get all those different colors. So we love that. And I think one of my recommendations for home eating is a lot of times to, if you have a lot of the, if you do it from a shopping standpoint, shop those ingredients, then you can set up a salad bar at home. You could set up a yogurt bar at home. You can set up a cereal or a nuts and seeds or a smoothie bar or an, an ice cream bar and do it with a cashew or something on that part, and it can be even a little bit healthier. And that part is going to be great because you can really assemble according to, on this part. So you're a little light on the carbohydrate too. Did you feel like in the afternoon, after you had that, have you been great since, or did you pit stop for anything else in the after that?
I did right after I ate that. I was at home. At Trader Joe's, I got my snack. I like these almonds. They're covered with sesame seeds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I needed those right
Great. Yeah. And are they sweet or they're sweet? Yeah. So I think that's what that will happen is we need to have something. If we don't have the carbohydrate, we're going to want something sweet on that part, right? Very good choices. So certainly on that piece. Okay. And so did anyone over at the service station? Did anyone pop anything? Medications, supplements? Anybody taking? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a ton of stuff. Okay, good. And do you take it at in the morning? Do you take it in the afternoon? Do you take it all day long?
Probiotics that I take
Great.
before I eat.
Yeah.
I can just drink water, I do that, then I wait 30 minutes, and then I have like a nut bar and orange, and then I have the calcium and the C and D and, oh golly.
The whole alphabet.
Yeah.
The whole, yeah.
Just to support, because I end up falling back on nut bars.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Convenience?
I like them, and I don't have to do anything.
There you go. Who else? Anybody else? Let's be human, of course, right?
Bars?
Yeah, bars. I think I've had 2 both days, right, or something on that part. They are really convenient. What we do have to look at what they're offering and, yeah, the sugar content and that piece. Okay, great. So I think in terms of the reason I include the service station in there is it's really important for us to pay attention to what else is going in our system on an ongoing basis, right? So if we are taking a calcium supplement all the time, we need to make sure that we evaluate how much calcium are we getting in from our food as well, because what we don't want to do is be getting in too much, right? And I think that the idea is that we are turning towards supplements more and more often, and a lot of our protein powders also have supplements in them. A lot of our, different things have, you'll get those supplemental ingredients, and we can end up with too much of one ingredient, which can actually throw off or increase our needs of another, right? And this isn't stuff that would show up in your blood work, because the body in your blood, when we test our blood work, the body is always preferentially going to make sure that the blood work is healthy. The nutrients are going to be there, they're going to be at that level. So it's harder for us to find out that we're getting too much of a nutrient. But when we get too much calcium, calcium undirected can go into our arteries and cause arterial plaque, or it can cause kidney stones or be a factor in stones in that part. And it also, calcium does this. It tenses, this is when we're contracting our arm, our muscle here, this is what calcium is doing, right? So every muscle in our body, that's what is happening with that calcium, that contraction. So that helps our heart muscle contract, which is important, helps our digestive tract, which is all muscle, contract. So if we're staying in this contracted state, if I was to stay up here any longer doing this, I naturally have to go like this. I'm tired, right? I need to relax. And that we need magnesium in order to relax. And what's interesting is when we look at, there's so much attention placed right now to how important calcium is, a lot of it led by the dairy industry, but how important calcium is, but 70 to 80% of adult men and women are not getting in enough magnesium. And magnesium needs to exist inside of our cells in order to turn off the stress response. So our cells, when stress happens, calcium shoots into the cell, and if there is not magnesium in there to kick it out, the cell is going to stay activated in that stress response, right? That's an oversimplification. If anyone is, further scientific, that's just how that's the story. But those are the essential cores there, right? And so what's really important for us is to make sure that if we are increasing, if we're taking any calcium, we need to make sure that either our food sources are giving us enough magnesium, or that we're adding a supplemental magnesium as well. So a lot of the work that I do in this total evaluation, and I'll show you some of my assessment tools as we're going through, is actually to look at your food and figure out, okay, if you're doing food and you're taking a supplement, I need to make sure that we're not giving you too much, because more is not better. There was nothing in the definition of better nutrition that was about more. In fact, less is usually better, especially if it's better quality. And less more often is actually really good for us, as we were talking about on that part. So when we talk about supplements, one of the things we want to think about, and you were mentioning with your salad, you had sesame seeds, and you started to say that the nut bars. So sesame seeds are like one of the greatest sources of calcium. I add sesame seeds in when I'm making things so that I can get higher calcium that way, so I don't have to take a calcium supplement. But if I'm doing that, and my doctor told me to take a bone supplement to get calcium, then I could be getting in too much, right? But it also depends on how often am I having those sesame seeds. So we want to start to assess that. And the good news is that you don't have to do that on your own. I'm going to not go through this part for the sake of time. I'm going to talk about the assessment piece a little bit further. But I just want to tell you what you have in your workbook that we're able to do. What we would do now is we would take what you just did with the filling out of the pit stops on there. You would start to look at it and say what's working. So what's working with the example that she gave me back there? What's working is she's doing rock star when she gets that salad in and getting in all of these different colors, right? She's also doing great with getting in the protein from the wild salmon, the essential fatty acids. Many of you could look, and if you were able to fill in 3 or 4 or 5 pit stops, you could say, hey, I'm doing really good with the frequency, right? So let me go ahead and write that part in. And if you need help as you're doing that, you just go back to that original page on what are the 4 pillars of better nutrition. If you are making a choice and let's say that there was an option for having something that had color in it, and you're not choosing the one that has artificial colors and you're choosing the one that's flavored with real food and you're getting your color in that way, or maybe you made a recipe, then that would be something else that's working. You're doing well on that part. What about if you wrote on, if I go backward, if you over here it said my body, my exercise was okay, or I nailed it, then that's something that you want to note in there that was working, right? What if when you were drinking, you noticed at each of these different times you were drinking water, or you had iced tea, or you were getting in, just more water on that part? That's going to be something that's working. So we actually want to make sure, very important right here to my earlier conversation, that you note what's working, because then we want to go into what's not working. And what's interesting to me is all my patients come into my office, every one of them comes into my office, and this is where they start. And there's a laundry list. We are really good at talking about all of the things that we think that we need to do better, right? All the things that we're not doing. Like, what could need attention? Well, any part of my nutrition. I'm having bars too often, or I'm taking this, or I don't feel this way, or I'm doing that part. And the other part is we can also decide after evaluating our nutrition that, wow, there were 27 things that Ashley brought up. I'm sure that I need to work on all of those. So that's not helpful or healthful because we cannot work on too many things at one time. It physically is too challenging for the body to try to adjust to working on all of these different things. So one of the things I actually, with my online program, we actually just do one thing better. We have a challenge. Everybody gets an email and we do one thing better each week. And you know what happens if you do one thing better each week? At the end of the week, what's happened? Raise your hand. I'll pick someone. What's happened?
New habit.
It's a new habit. Good habit, bad habit.
Good habit.
It could be a better, if you did something good, yeah. So if you do one thing better in the week, guess what happens at the end of the week? You've done one thing better, right? It's not a trick question, right? We've done one thing better. So if we end a week and we've done one thing better, how many people would just like to end a week and be like, I did one thing better, right? Totally me, right? And so then we get to give ourselves credit for it, and we've done one thing better. So what I really want people to focus on, it's so important, is to recognize, and there might be a hierarchy of things, maybe it's really, wow, I notice that when I don't sleep well, that the rest of my day eating is not going well. So I am really going to focus on my sleep, right? And so that might be one of the things. But the most I let people pick is 3 to 5. And what I usually do is in my office, or if I'm working with them on Skype, I'll let them pick 5, and then I only talk about 3, right? Because we're only going to focus on. And so what we do in that part is then we get really specific. And you'll see these examples in the back of your book because I want to walk you through. It is not just about saying, I'm going to get more water in. So if I'm not getting in 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water, which, by the way, may not be your right number. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if I'm not getting that in, and I just turn around and say, I'm going to get in more water, are you going to get in more water? There's a reason right now that you're not getting in that water. So until you know what that reason is, and until you actually make a plan for how you're going to get in more water, we're going to run into this issue. We're going to keep running into that issue. So we actually have to plan out on that part. What are some of the changes that I could make, right? So some of the changes could be that, okay, I'm going to put a Brita filter and a water right by where I brush my teeth. Or, I'm going to make a deal with myself. If I'm going to have, this might sound really familiar to me, if I'm going to have my espresso in the morning, I have to have a glass of water, right? So you can, or if you're taking a probiotic, then of course you're going to go ahead and need something to take in. I'm going to take water when I'm having my probiotic. Or you can buy yourself can you show your bottle? A really beautiful bottle so that you can carry it. Yeah, it's gorgeous. And so then, of course, when you buy pretty things and we have pretty things, we want to use pretty things, right? So then it's all right, I've got that water bottle, right? So I feel like we've got it. What we really have to do is focus in on the planning. And I think that's a place where a lot of us in that effort to do better, it's not working. It's funny, this question came up at my group earlier today, and they're like, I like to drink a glass of wine every now and then, or as some people are saying, always, but I don't see where it fits in on this plan, and how do I fit that in? And so the question isn't about, can I not have wine on your plan? So if you tell me that you love having your glass of wine and I create a plan that includes no wine, we are a total disconnect. Like you would just be, it's not going to work, or it's going to work for a short period of time, or I'm going to have the conversation with you that says, based on your health issues right now, I hate to do this, you can't have wine, but here's something else I'm going to help you have. We've got to find a way to have that conversation. And so in this one, we have to really look at, so what choices do I need to make? Well, if I want to have a glass of wine, I want to think about it like my dessert. So I'm not going to have a scoop of ice cream. So if the kids are having a scoop of ice cream, they're going to have a scoop of ice cream, I'm going to have a glass of wine, and everybody's going to be really happy, in that space. So I feel like it's about making those choices, but we really have to, as we start to work on those things. So one of the things that you can do, and it's really helpful to look at your typical day and your not so typical day, and the reason that I break that up in there, we only went through the typical day, is that you will start to see that there are things that you actually do really well on a not-so-typical day, and there are ways that you can use what you did there and say, how can I incorporate that in, right? When I stay in a hotel, I always get to the gym. I wake up in the morning, I have nothing else to deal with. I'm like, this is great. I can do an in-room, I can get down to the gym, So then I have to start thinking, okay, what in my day at home, how do I make that happen? Is it that I have to wake up before anyone else? Is it that I have to, make sure that my gym is across the street or upstairs? Like, what are the things that I can implement on that part? And so I think it really is about looking at your typical day and your not so typical day on that part. So the other part is this assessment idea. So one option that you can have is that you can hire a dietitian. Tori, raise your hand. We've got a dietitian in the room. I realized, I thought I was telling people she's 40 minutes from here. She's 2.5 hours from here, but wonderful dietitian. So you can certainly work with someone, but the reality of it is that what we need to do, and we need to put this responsibility on ourselves first and foremost, and then decide, on ourselves first and foremost, and then decide who's going to be on our team to help us do this, is we've got to do a better job assessing what we need on that part. So there, unfortunately, are a lot of quick and easy prescriptions. We like formulas, especially in medicine. We love to say, like, okay, let me figure out your BMI, your body mass index. How helpful is that? To know just from a weight and a height standpoint, what does anyone's weight and height tell us about them? I mean, it might give us a range and we're looking for some help in there, but it's not really going to tell us anything about the way that somebody's physique is. I can have somebody who is 5'5" and 150 pounds and they are ripped and they're tight, and I can have somebody who's 5'5" and 150 pounds and they've got belly fat or arm fat and have no muscle on that part. So it's really important for us to do better assessments. So one of the assessments, I get asked the question all the time about how much protein do I need? And one of the other things that we're noticing, and we actually have more statistics coming in from a consumption standpoint, that we're actually consuming a lot of protein in this country. Part of the reason is we've been told that we need to eat less carbohydrates, and we don't want to eat less overall. So something has to go up. So our protein intake has gone up right now, right? And now we're also seeing our fat intake go up because, of course, the whole answer can't be that we have to just eat less on that part, or that we have to eat non-starchy vegetables, right? So that one never sticks, but the increase in protein. So we're seeing that we're consuming more protein. And in consuming more protein, we have to remember protein needs to be, in order to be digested, protein is actually going in through both our liver and our kidneys are going to be responsible in that protein digestion. So what we're basically doing is making our liver and our kidneys work harder. In addition, protein doesn't just help build muscles. It actually is what protein is going to be doing for us is it's responsible and involved in most of our communications. So what happens when, if this has ever happened to anyone, 3 people are talking to you or asking you about the same thing at once? It's tough, right? It's tough to hear them or even act like you want to be listening to everybody. And it's really tough in that space to get the accurate communication. And that's what's happening to our body. We're getting in too much. And so one of the things that in an effort to reduce how much we're getting in or to get targeted about how much we need, we've been turning to equations. And we have things. You could take your body weight in pounds and you could multiply it times 0.36. And that's your number. And a lot of people are doing that. Or they're doing like 0.8 grams per kilogram, and they're using a statistic, a number. But the problem with that is that's a number for who? We need to talk about who you are right now. That has to be part of the assessment. So what I go through in the questions on there are things like, so are you active? Are you lifting weights? On the flip side, are you sedentary? Are you healing from something? When we're healing, the body may need more protein. Do you have digestive issues? If you have digestive issues, we may not want to get as much protein in, or these kinds of things. And all of those, answering those questions will then help you get to your better number. But another part, going back to that example of how we use points, like from the Weight Watchers example, is we don't want to consume all our protein at one time. We want to space it out throughout the day. So as you're looking at your at the typical day that you did, and you can open yours up now. One of the things that we want to do, and we can actually go through this. I'll read it because it's harder for anyone to read, even me with my glasses. And this is online, and these are easy assessments that you can do on my Better Nutrition program. So you would actually look at where are you getting your protein. So you would ask, am I getting my protein from nuts and seeds, from beans and grains, from starchy vegetables? Some people, we do get proteins, we get amino acids in our vegetables. What about from eggs, from lamb, chicken, et cetera? And we're going to ask that part. And then we also want to know how much, how many servings am I getting on that part? And then a really important part, remember I was just telling you that proteins are actually responsible for and involved in a lot of the communications. So if they're involved in those communications, you want good messaging happening, right? So protein is one of the areas that you want to pay attention to quality, especially if your proteins are coming from an animal. You want to make sure that we're getting better quality in that part. And so as we go through that whole protein assessment, and over here it asks you to look at how often. So one of the things that I'll typically see is I'll either see, if we use the example of the two women that were sharing, actually all three that were sharing their examples. So we had eggs, or we had salmon on a salad, and we had nuts on a nut bar on that part. Doing great. We're getting in a decent amount of protein on that piece. It sounds like nobody was having too much protein on that part. But then maybe lunchtime or dinner or whatever ends up being something where it's like I had a salad and I didn't get the protein on it, right? Or maybe I decided to have, maybe I was doing like farro and, tomato sauce, and I don't like the meat, and so I asked for mine without the meat. So we can look at, are we lumping all our protein at one time instead of spreading it out on that part, and that will be really helpful. And so in that way, what we can do as you're evaluating what you're doing on here is you can start to see, are there places where I'm consistently either missing out and not getting protein in, or where I'm overdoing it from a quantity standpoint. When we look at bars, for example, and this is in the Better Nutrition Plan, there's a couple of pages in there that show you for your fruits, for your vegetables, and then you'll see your protein section. That'll tell you, and it's actually 3 areas where you get protein from, what the quantity is, and that helps you look at the amount that you are having. So, a protein, we can think, oh, I'm getting in nuts and seeds, and she said nuts and seeds are protein. However, what if your bar only has 3 grams worth of protein, right? What if you're, or 4 grams in that part, or on the flip side, what if your salmon portion was 6 ounces, or 8 ounces, and we're getting a much higher amount, or your meat portion, then we would be having too much at one time. So you can use tools like this to help you continue to evaluate the certain things that you're focused on. This is available to anyone who wants to email me. This is my Better Back to School Nutrition Guide, and it gives us some tips if we're now focused on from a family standpoint, but really focused on the adult side as well as on the kid side, and really looking at, we lay out here the quantity, the quality, the nutrient balance, the frequency. I'll point out one of my favorites over here. So I like to make banana sushi, and I'm going to point this out because not a lot of people know about hemp seeds. So hemp seeds, so first of all, just having a banana, rolling it in nut butter, rolling it in some seeds, calling it sushi, that's all fun, right? And engaging at your kids and doing it yourself, it's actually, I find it fun to do. Doing it yourself is, that's a great way to interact on the food front. But one of the things that we run into is that your banana is your carbohydrate, right? And so sometimes we'll have, like with kids, it'll be, or for ourselves, hey, I'm gonna do hummus and pita. And I end up, and it's like, okay, I'm choosing the hummus because it's plant-based, it's giving me some protein, that part's great. But when I'm having it with the pita, I might be getting in too much carbohydrate. If I'm working on weight loss, or I'm working on energy, that might not work as well. But on the flip side, with kids, some of the hardest things to get in for kids is getting in protein, especially plant protein. And then the second piece is getting in essential fatty acids. And they're so critical, those omega-3s are so important for brain health, heart health, et cetera. So hemp seeds actually are a seed that provides you, I call them the wild salmon of the plant kingdom. And the reason I call them that is that they're providing you with the essential fatty acids that you would get from wild salmon. They're also providing you with fiber and iron, and they're providing you with a complete plant protein source. So that's a complete protein. So when we do all of that, what they're not providing us with is any extra carbohydrate. So suddenly, I now have this option, especially if I'm following more of a plant-based diet, where I can get better nutrient balance. So if on oatmeal, if instead of putting fruit on oatmeal, I put the hemp seeds on oatmeal, maybe I put some cinnamon, maybe because I like chocolate, I put a little cacao or a little bit of chocolate in there, maybe I put some peanut butter, there are ways we can do, but when you add the hemp seeds, you're getting in those nutrients, and that can be an easy way to upgrade it. You can also sprinkle them on top of and sprinkle them on top of a smoothie, and so then everybody likes to do sprinkles, so that can be really fun. You can also soak them in, if you put them in with your blueberries and they turn a little bit bluish and it looks like you have colored sprinkles, and you can do that on top of yogurt. So there are fun ways that we can be getting that part in. Some of the other things that I talk about over on here is also the idea of during the school year, it may be worth looking at a better quality multi from a family standpoint so that you can just take the pressure off, from that standpoint of if the day that you read me did not resemble this woman in the back's lunch for any reason, i.e. mine, like I was out and about, it didn't happen. I did have lovely foods, but I didn't get in, I actually today probably got in fewer greens. I did have some cucumber, but I got in fewer greens than I actually normally do. And, oh, that's not true. I did drink a greens juice. However, I got in less. So by getting in less, but if I'm taking a multi, and for me, I never get in orange foods. So who said? You said carrots and what was the other one? Oranges. What else is orange?
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato. What else is orange? Bell peppers. What else? Carrots, yeah. Cantaloupe. I don't get any of them in. I don't know what it is. Like I just don't get the orange in. So for me, when I picked out my multi, based on, I did my rainbow assessment, and when I picked out my multi, my rainbow assessment here, I was like, all right, I can, talk as a good dietitian. I can really step up my game and try to get the orange in. I tried for about 2 weeks. I wasn't doing it. I maybe got sweet potato in once, or I actually got it in more often because I made sweet potato toast, which is awesome. You slice it long and you put it in the toaster, or you do it pan fried. It's great. Totally did it. Never done it again, right? It was like a great effort. I was going to totally, I was really gung-ho. It was like my New Year's resolution, I'm going to get orange in. Didn't happen. And so for me, this whole thing isn't happening. And I turned around and I said, you know what? There's a multi out there that's made with organic oranges. All right, that's my next best option, right? So now when I get in orange, I feel like a champion if I'm doing it from a food standpoint, but my better choice was to make sure that I got that in. And so strategically, we can certainly use, a supplement on that part in that way. I talked about liquid nutrition, one of my favorite things from a family standpoint to be able to have people do, because the idea, there are a couple of different ways that you can do it, but a lot of the single blenders today have, they come with 4 or 5 different cups, and they also have different cup sizes. And so actually everyone can put the ingredients that they want in their smoothie and do it that way, and you can do it based on colors. You can say, let's put the colors in, or you could also do it based on the nutrient groups, right? And you could say, okay, you can choose from one thing from this because that's your protein, one thing from this is your carbohydrate, one thing, and then everybody can go ahead and be able to blend it. And that's a great way, and it does, for so many, I'm sure this is not the case at Wellington, but a lot of kids are leading stressful lives with a lot of the activities that they have and homework and commitments that they have. And so remember, when we're all, for any of us, when we're more stressed out, that digestion isn't getting as much attention. And so, starting off the day or even ending the day, you might decide to do the liquid nutrition at the end of the day and doing it that way. Over on the far right, there I have a broccoli cauliflower crust pizza. I find the the cauliflower crust, and most places are doing it now with egg and some cheese. Like most of the recipes are cauliflower, some egg and cheese, and do it that way. So I actually don't. That looks cute. I don't usually do the cheese then again on top. That might be a little overkill. I might want to do the sauce, in that piece. But you can do fun things. Like you can make a fun face by taking a turkey sausage if you want and doing slices on there. Or you could do, if you don't want that, you could do zucchini slices and you can make a face that way.
Okay, so I tried the
Crust, yeah.
cauliflower, and it smells like cauliflower.
As the cauliflower.
Not, but
Oh.
cauliflower smells like.
So question mark, did you, so there are a couple of things to note. So if you're putting cauliflower in a smoothie, always make it cold. If it's frozen, it has to be frozen. You will not taste it then. At that frozen temperature, you don't taste and you don't smell the cauliflower. And it's a great one because cauliflower in a smoothie can replace banana. You still get that creaminess and it keeps it white and that kind of thing. And then you don't have this, you haven't used up the starch, right? I love banana. We don't have to replace the banana, but just as you're picking and choosing your carbohydrates. But one of the interesting things that I learned, I'm not a big microwave person, but when I did the cauliflower pizza crust, I found that if you, most people, you can do it in the microwave, and if you have the top on the lid, then you do want to let all of that go. But by the time you're baking it in the oven, you've lost the smell of it. So at least I've made it a bunch of times, but so it may just be, or it could be.
I went directly to the oven.
So then on that part, yeah. And then coming out of the oven, it still smelled?
Yes.
Was it crispy or no? The crust?
Lou wouldn't eat it. I ended up eating it.
There you go. Yeah. So another part of it with that, you got to get it crispy. You might have been going light on the cheese, like who knows, right? So anyway, there are fun ways, and we all have recipe mishaps. That totally happens. But I do find that can be, there are fun ways today. Another fun one that I like is using chickpea flour or garbanzo bean flour. I like that because it's just an easy way to get a little more fiber in, and you get the protein in that way. So I actually do something. It's a Mediterranean recipe called soca, and I did this one, Dr. Oz. There's a fun recipe online you can see. But you literally just mix the garbanzo bean flour with olive oil and water. If you want to put some spices in, you can. I leave it in a mason jar. I make a bunch of it. I leave in the mixture in my refrigerator with one of those. You know how in a shaker cup there are those balls, the shaker. So I leave it in there, and then I just shake it up, and then I can make the pancake that way. You can make it into a pancake, a savory pancake. You can make it into a flatbread and do it that way. So I think there are ways that we can, we can integrate more nutrition that are still going to be crowd pleasers. A lot of times it's just about what you get to put on top of it or how you decorate it. Of course, sometimes it is the taste that's the deterrent, and then we have to move on to something new. But we have such adventurous eaters, so then on that part, it doesn't matter that much. So I just wanted to go, before I jump into questions, I wanted to go through a little bit of some of the different things. So these are I have all of these different evaluations. The rainbow evaluation, so important. Your water evaluation, helping figure out how much water do I actually need. I was talking about magnesium before. How much magnesium do I need? The calcium evaluation. And more importantly than how much do I need is how much am I currently getting in. And this really is the only place, the reason I created this is I was trying to figure out what happens in my office that creates different outcomes. I work with a lot of executives, and we were talking about celebrities and that piece, but all of us, we're all in the same place where we're reading and then we're trying and testing out and doing a lot of things. And I think what really happens in a dietitian's office, or should happen in a dietitian's office, is that's the time period where you're doing these assessments. And so for 20 years now, I've been doing from an assessment standpoint, either for myself or then for my patients, figuring out what it is that I'm getting in. But remember, going back to the very first slide of what is better nutrition, it's about what's going in and on your body more often. So one of the reasons to do the evaluations is to say, what foods am I getting in? What supplements am I taking in? What beverages am I taking in? And then there's some questions I'm going to ask. I'm going to say, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? From a medical standpoint, when that doctor asked me, what did I ever go on an antibiotic? It was the first time that anybody had ever said that. And granted, that was longer ago. Now that's, it's more well known. But I think those key questions, when we ask and we get those answers, it's like, so for example, in my cholesterol evaluation, if I ask, are you taking a statin? I now know I need you to, if you're taking a statin, I should have you on CoQ10. It's super easy. I'm not going to play around. You're not going to get that from food. I need to make sure that you're getting that in, right? Or if I start going through the omega-3 evaluation and I'm noticing that you're not getting in omega-3s, but maybe you love eating almonds. Okay, let's add some walnuts in there, right? So in that way, I think we can start to make some really significant changes from our own health, building off of what we're already doing, instead of getting a book or getting a program that tells you what you should be doing without asking any questions of what you are already doing, right? I think that's a really key thing when we're looking at better outcomes. So every Monday night, in case you miss me, every Monday night I do a Facebook Live, and they're also stored on my Facebook on my Ashley Koff approved page under the video section on every one of these topics. So I did one on back to school nutrition, about an hour and a half, going through all the different recommendations, choices, that's on there. I've done, heart health, different topics. I sometimes bring in guest experts. I also have different menus on there. So for example, a better menu right now on my site on the home page. So every month there is an evaluation, a menu, and a do one thing better challenge or a nutrition lesson available that you can download. So you can be doing this for free. This is not something that you ever have to spend money on. You just have to remember on a monthly basis to check on the site and download those things. If you would like to be doing them or part of our do one thing better challenge group that we do every week, or the Facebook or any of that stuff, or do any of the different evaluations, then you sign up for the membership. And then I have a ton of recipes. That there is one of my absolute favorite recipes. Tori knows this because I incorporate it into every single menu that I'm working on. That is hemp pesto. So I love pesto. There is nothing wrong with pesto. I'm a big fan. Hemp pesto, next level. Because for me, I turned around and I was like, so pesto normally, fat, great, delicious, I love having it on there, but hemp pesto now becomes this protein, omega-3 rich, fibrous, iron rich, great option that totally tastes delicious, that I can, put on a piece of sweet potato toast. I can put it on regular toast. I can, oh my gosh, all the things that I've done with it, right? You can put it on. I love to do stacks of, I take grilled zucchini and I'll put the hemp seed pesto in there and do little roll-ups or do it more like a lasagna. So really fun. And so for me, on my recipe section, they're actually not all recipes that I created, which is really awesome for all of you because that's not my area of expertise. But on the recipe standpoint, what is my area of expertise is to tell you why they're a better recipe. And so I go in there and tell you, what you're getting. So if you're in searching, if you heard me talk about magnesium and you're wondering if you need magnesium, don't wonder. Don't guess, do the evaluation, assess if you need the magnesium, but then you can go over to the magnesium menu and say, oh, I had no idea that Ashley is prescribing that I grab an ounce of dark chocolate and I stick it in some cashew or almond butter, right? I just made a lot of best friends here. So that's gonna be a great option, and talking to your kids even about, how do you, it can be a great option to say we're getting in that chocolate, right? So if we get in better quality chocolate, then we want to go ahead and have that chocolate. So I have all those resources. So I think that was the end, so we'll come back. So let's answer, where are we on time? I just want to make sure. Oh, okay, great. It's a little too long, but that's okay. But we've got time for questions. So Karen, yes, go ahead.
What causes those low blood sugar drops, particularly if you've already eaten?
Yeah, totally. So there are several things that can cause it. However, one of the things is if our body is not taking the sugar and getting it into the cells by way of so insulin has to come along and escort it into the cells and that part. And so it could be an issue with the sugar, from a chromium standpoint, or some of the other things that the cell needs to actually have that sugar come into the cell. It could be that from the standpoint of what else you had. So maybe you had carbohydrate, and some sort of a stimulant like a coffee, but you didn't have the proteins and the healthy fat, or maybe there wasn't the fiber in there. Yeah, totally.
We eat breakfast, we drink water every morning.
Okay.
We eat a full breakfast.
Yeah.
And coffee. But one day we had whole grain toast.
Okay.
With avocado.
Yeah.
Fried egg, hemp seeds, or coffee.
Yeah.
Took us on a walk. Like 20 minutes later, horrible sugar drops. So
Really?
inhaling chocolate.
Yes. Had you been traveling?
No, but
Before
it
that?
seems to happen with the both of us more of a morning thing. We
Yeah.
eat a lot when we first wake up.
Totally.
And if we're going to have a sugar drop, it seems to happen in the morning.
Did you have coffee before that or no?
With our meal.
With your meal, yeah. And without being public about it here, we can certainly email, et cetera. I'd have to ask more questions. It could have to do with your bowels, like what's going on that part, so I won't get into all of that. But it also could have to do our hormone cycle, right? And so with insulin, that's also going to be a hormone cycle factor. And so I'd want to explore a little bit of that part, yeah. And if it is happening, it sounds like it is happening actually with some regularity, then I think that it would be an important thing to take a look at.
I know we don't have diabetes.
Yes, no, and the way that you're eating, that was what a beautiful breakfast. Can I come over tomorrow? It's great, it's totally, yeah.
I know it's going
Totally.
to happen.
It could, and the interesting thing for me, and you're hydrated, it sounds like, I don't know, medication, so it would be something I'd want to look at what's happening in totality on that part. Yeah, for sure. All the way in the back, yeah.
Probiotics. So
Yes,
we want to do more probiotics, but we walk into the store and there's
Yeah.
a wall of
great,
probiotics.
yeah.
But how do you choose?
Great. So let's unpack in the world of marketing. And sorry, my foot. I'm going to lean my foot on the on the thing here. So let's unpack that statement for a moment. We want to do more. Probiotic is the first thing that we said. And then when we walk into the store, there's a whole wall of probiotics, right? So immediately what we're saying is more is better. So that's not it. So what I would say is we want to make sure that our bodies are getting enough good bacteria, right? Which is the probiotic. Okay. So we don't want to do more. We definitely don't want to do more. And the second part is, while there is a wall, there are also foods that are good sources of good bacteria, right? And so those foods, cultured vegetables, not everybody likes kraut or some of these, and there are more choices today than there certainly were. Fermented foods, so I think that in that way we might be able to get those in. But we can start to see why we're all looking at a supplement as I start to talk about those food choices, right? So I think the supplement piece is valid. What we also want to understand is now there are a couple, and actually the companies in Cleveland, Ohio, but there are a couple of companies that have made their particular strain of probiotic works in a lot of food products. So now we're seeing a lot of products promoting themselves as having probiotic in there that have no nutritional, you would never nutritionally find probiotic naturally in there. I don't tend to like those as a way to get in the probiotic. And the reason for that, I don't mind if the product is additionally good and they've done stuff, but a lot of it is it's not as good of a quality of product and they're just throwing the probiotic in there, right? So what is better? What's better is to understand that there are, to date that we know, thousands of different strains of probiotic. So we're still at the very early stages of knowing how those strains all work in the digestive system, what we need more of, what we need less of. Probably about 12 to 10 or 12 years ago, I worked on a project, so full disclosure, with Procter & Gamble to create one of the probiotics that's out there today. One of the reasons that I did that was I had myself had my own experience, and I noticed that I would do okay or pretty decently with a lactobacilli culturelle or one of these, and I think it's a great product. But when I started to learn about the blends, the ones that have the lactobacilli and also the bifidobacteria, this is on my website, so nobody needs this science project, but just to note that there are different strains, I noticed a considerable change, and I also noticed a better outcomes in my patients. Then I also started having patients that weren't doing well. They were getting almost no results with the lactobacilli, and so then I noticed if we just did the bifidobacteria that was great. And so the thinking today is that the bifidobacteria is a grounding one, so at minimum, I would always look to see if that bifidobacteria is in there. Now, as a practitioner, I am science-based, medical. I also care about what's the research on the particular strain. That's a little bit harder because I'm sure there are great strains that come in food or that are out there that just don't have the research money or haven't done that. I'm not too, for me, I'm focused on answering your question, which is how can I guide you to something that's better? So in that regard, I like this bifidobacteria infantis, which is in a couple of products, but the one that I had worked on is a line. I don't work with them any longer, but I helped on that one. And I really like that product. I think it's a great one. Now, there are other things. If we have travelers, loose stools from traveling, or if we're dealing with a yeast issue, or some other factors, I might recommend a Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a different kind. It's a beneficial bacteria there. But I like a probiotic supplement, and part of the challenge that we have is that bacteria is meant to be alive, and so a lot of times it's alive at the moment it's created, but it's not necessarily alive when it's getting to you, or it isn't surviving and thriving in the digestive tract. And so one of the things that we also want to do as we evaluate products is to make sure that we're getting in better quality products that have demonstrated that they've been tested all throughout that life cycle. So to make life a little bit easier on that part, if you go to my website all the way to the right, around about 15 years ago, I started for my practice, because people like you would ask that question, and then also the doctors would ask me, what probiotic, what fish oil. And now that all the names are the same, so I was like, okay, we've got to have, fortunately we have it on digital. So I have my Ashley Koff Approved is actually a nonprofit project. I've never been paid to evaluate a product, and I've evaluated over 100,000, and I have a supplement section under probiotics, and so you can choose from that. I also have on my website a full script where it sends you to a section where you can purchase approved products that I've approved if you want to, or you can sign up for that and look at that and then go purchase them, wherever you want. But I think that it's important to make sure that it's a lot of research to actually find out if it's a good product or not, and I don't know that you want to spend your time on that part, so I have spent my time on that, so I can offer that piece. One of the things I will tell you, though, is that taking a probiotic is not enough. So the piece is that in order to have a probiotic stay alive and thrive and create a great community so that it keeps out it can't keep out all bad bacteria, but keeps them, where in the state that they need to be in from a quantity standpoint, you need to have a good amount of fiber. And you also need to make sure your digestive tract is a little bit like tights, like the webbing there. It's meant to keep a lot of things in and let certain things float in and out. And if that, through medication, so one of the things that I went through with antibiotics and some of the other things was that I had a little bit more of what we call leaky gut, and so some of the nutrients could pass through. So that's pretty simple. I will usually put someone on a glutamine supplement, or we'll do a little bit of work there. And that may be a factor. So I also have had people on a probiotic where that isn't resolving the issue, and then we work on that piece. One of the evaluations I have is your digestive evaluation, and then the complement to that is a digestive tune-up. My patients and my members, we do that quarterly, because you are not what you eat, you are what you digest and absorb. So what's going in you needs to get where it's supposed to go in you, and otherwise it's not going to we're not going to get those outcomes that we want. So if there's a digestive issue, then that's certainly something we have to explore more. Yeah. Another question? I saw a hand pop up. Yeah, in the back. Yeah, totally. So first of all, something they like, because otherwise it's not going to happen, right? Or it'll get traded for something. And I think it's got to be pretty easy. So there's the things that I would be looking for. You definitely want to have some carbohydrate in there. And in the ideal world, I would pay attention to a little bit of protein. Not as important as getting that in afterwards. So for example, the banana with nut butter or doing anything with a banana, I think can be real easy. You can do. There are some better bars, and those are over on my approved section. Or just really looking at, that blend of some fruit, maybe a little bit of nuts in there. I find fruit is a pretty easy one right before game. I think that's going to be, that's doable. I am not against chips from a potato. They just have to be from potato, and they can't have a high amount of salt. And the advantage of something like a kettle chip or one of these that's going to be a better quality, or if you're making potato and the potato chip at home, is you're actually getting in a good amount of potassium, and that's actually going to be helpful for them. Instead of doing the Gatorade, you can be doing the potassium, which means that the potassium helps escort the water inside the cells. So potato, sweet potato, that's a nice option. Half a sandwich could be a good option. I feel like that could go over well. Sometimes people have just said to me, my kid does really well. I do a tortilla and I do a little bit of a bean spread on there, and they'll do that. Some kids don't do well with that, and that's more gassy, and so we don't want to do that part. But I think it's really the key thing there that I'm looking for is the carbohydrate. I think more importantly is to make sure that when they're finished, they've had some water, and then they get that nutrient replenishment on that part. And the key thing in my mind is actually that they are having something pre-game, pre-workout, pre-practice, because we can't wait until 8 o'clock at night. Nobody should be going from 12 to 8 on that part. And then it's really hard to put the pressure on eating well at 8 o'clock at night in that way. Yeah, I have a whole menu on there, and then do me a favor. I'll make sure you get my card, but shoot me an email on that one, because on a blog I can just pull together a couple of those recommendations. Did I see another question? I feel like I saw a hand going up over to the right.
Are there specific brand names that you recommend for multivitamin for a child?
Sure. I do, and most of them are over on the approved list, and I think a part of it really depends on how's your kid going to take it, because so I used to be adamantly opposed to gummies. But I will say that was because the only one I would see is Flintstones. And I was like, the ingredients in the Flintstones are not what I want anyone to be having, as well as the sugar on top of that. So disclosure, I work with the company Smarty Pants, and so I've done with them. And so we've reduced the amount of sugar, and they're using good quality sugar, but we're also using it as a vehicle to get in, fish oil, vitamin D, that kind of a thing. Also, Mega Food is another company I work with. I work with many companies so that I don't have to be, I'm not exclusive to one in that part. I feel like it's really about, is your kid going to do better with a liquid? Is your kid going to do better with a powder that you're hiding in something? Are they able to swallow a tablet? And if they want a gummy, then you have to have the very real conversation of, so you are having a gummy vitamin right now, a vitamin and mineral, and we're going to have this. This is great. We get to have a sweet treat, but this A is our sweet treat, so this is our sugar, and B, we have to be clear that it's not candy on that part. We never put iron or nutrients in there that if somebody was consuming it, that they would, that it would be, a risk of an overdose at that point. But still, you want to make sure that we don't sort of blur those lines between gummy candy. Somebody just sent me protein lollipops. Let me be clear, they're not on my approved list. I was like, all right, I think we can do better in that way. I'm probably over on time. I see you standing there just like, there we go, just a touch. Did you have a question?
Many questions.
You have many questions. There we go. There you go. Okay, good.
Ashley Koff, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks. Totally.
You see why we are proud to claim Ashley as a Jag. Thank you so much.
Woohoo,
for
go
the
Jags.
inspirational,
Thank you.
evening. And we ask everybody to please fill this out.